13 years ago I traveled to America. That's when I met Richard. Friends and guides who will be an important part of my life. Richard is a Laotian who grew up in a refugee camp in Phetchabun before moving to America. He became my interpreter and guide in this unfamiliar land. It helped me overcome the challenges of a new place and a new language. One day, in 2011, Richard sent me a message, inviting me to join him on a hunting trip to his family's farm in Oregon. His father, a former Laos soldier who had fought alongside the United States during the Vietnam War, had bought a farm there. Hunting was a tradition for many American farmers, especially during the colder months of November and December, when the farming season waned. I packed up my gear and headed out, knowing that hunting season was upon us. During the last week of November or until today it has been 10 years since I traveled to Oregon. I met Uncle Bob. Richard's father, a man with many stories and wisdom. While we are settling down, Uncle Bob then told me about the surrounding forest. Where people disappear every year, their corpses are often covered in snow in winter. This year, our hunt would be different. Richard's father asked if I knew of the creature called Saming. I was startled, for I had heard tales of this beast in Thailand. Stories of a tiger possessed by a malevolent spirit, known for devouring humans. But I had never hunted anything so fierce before, usually sticking to deer or moose. Richard's father reassured me by saying that it was not the tiger we were looking for. But in my heart, I wondered what it might be, maybe a wolf, coyote, or even a mountain lion. But he did not give a clear answer. He said we had to hunt deer. But these deer were unlike any deer I had ever seen before. Richard's father. It tells of how the deer were starving during the harsh winter months. And sometimes they eat human remains hidden under the snow. Eating this horrible food, making them become more frightening and dangerous. As he shares these chilling stories, I can't help but think of similar stories from Thailand. There, it is said that stray cats turned into ghosts after eating dead people's toes during the plague. It is a belief that is deeply rooted in folklore. But it seems eerily related to a story Richard's father told. In America, hunting is a legal and regulated activity. They have licenses and quotas to maintain a balanced wildlife population. The forest here is vast and natural. And it is not uncommon for thousands of people to disappear each year. Of these, only a fraction has been discovered. Whether dead or alive, the rest usually disappear without a trace. Uncle Bob, Richard's father, bought a farm in Oregon after moving to the United States. As a former Laos soldier, who fought alongside the American Army during the Vietnam War. On Uncle Bob's farm, there is Jonathan, a native Indian who works there. During the winter there is no agricultural work. Therefore, it became a tradition for them to go hunting. That year, Rich invited me to join them on a hunting trip to a forest known as Wendigo Pass. The name intrigued me. In Thai, pass means a checkpoint or a path through difficult terrain. I had never heard of Wendigo before and assumed it must be a native term. Jonathan confirmed this, explaining that Wendigo was from the Huargangwan language, which translates to cannibalism or demon. Jonathan recounted the chilling legend of the Wendigo, a creature from the Khao Naha Indian beliefs. In the harsh winters of the north, when food was scarce, some resorted to eating human flesh, either scavenging the dead or, in desperation, killing others. Those who committed such acts were cursed to transform into Wendigos. Monstrous beings with elongated limbs, pale skin, and a relentless hunger for human flesh. While Jonathan spoke, I can't help but think of the Thai folk tale of a ghost cat that eats human corpses. This eerie similarity, adding to the uneasiness attached to our journey. Before going into the forest, we had to buy a hunting license from a forest ranger who was a friend of Uncle Bob. He introduced us about the peculiarities of the Wendigo Pass area, an old volcanic area. This mineral-rich soil can distort compass readings. As a result, travelers get lost. He also warns us, never use fire that you did not create yourself. A traveler has been reported missing. Found frozen to death next to a fire. Which turned out to be just an illusion, which is the dying act of the previous victim. Equipped with our permits and a mix of apprehension and excitement, we prepared for the hunt. We loaded our gear onto 2 ATVs, ready for the vast wilderness. The first night, we stayed at a forest hotel, setting out early the next morning. As we approached Wendigo Pass, dense fog enveloped the area. This slows down our progress. By the lake, we meet with search and rescue personnel. 60-70 people in total. Rich told me someone was missing. And the district chief advised us to wait until the search was finished. This is to avoid disturbing the path or scent desired by the sniffer dog. It was a time when we had nothing to do but talk to the officials. He sat there, eating a sandwich, and we approached him. Liz decided to try and ask him directly. "Brothers, have you noticed anything strange when he goes searching for missing people?" The official, in his usual manner, replied, "Most cases are explainable by science. You walk into the forest, get lost, and that's what he's looking for." He then recounted a peculiar incident. 2 people entered the forest. A person was driving an ATV along a narrow dirt path when a deer suddenly crossed the road. The driver was too close to prepare his cumbersome rifle. So he pulled out a pistol. Shooting a deer with a handgun is against the law. This is because bullets are large, travel slowly and often only injure deer. The deer didn't die from the first shot but jumped onto the side of the road. The driver was sure he had fired a bullet that hit the deer and then gave chase. But it's gone. This is why they don't allow people to hunt deer with handguns, the official explained. It's dangerous if you don't kill them in one shot. You might die yourself. Another story the official shared was about a man who went missing for 3 to 4 days. When they found him, he was lying dead by the side of the road, not far from a visible path that could have led him out of the forest. The rescue team, all volunteers, knew this was not a suicide despite what the in-charge officer suggested. The man's equipment was complete, and he had clearly been trying to survive. He had walked in circles, in a tight radius, until he ran out of food and firewood and froze to death. Rescuers suspect there's something more sinister, like a blindfolded ghost, where a person can't see a path or find a way out. Even if they are there. The forest, the official noted, often becomes silent when someone enters. Animals, sensing an intruder, quiet down. Normally, the sounds resume after a while, indicating the animals no longer see the person as a threat. But if the silence persists, it means something else has entered the forest. Some people who have gone missing report experiencing a strange form of sensory cut-off. They hear nothing, see only images without sounds, and everything gradually darkens, like a screen fading out. Only when rescued do they become fully aware again. The official speculated that supernatural forces might manipulate what a person sees, hears, or smells, blocking their senses entirely. After discussing these eerie events, the district officials allowed us to continue our journey. We were warned to follow safety rules and avoid reckless actions. So we got on an ATV and drove deep into the forest. With a sense of foreboding, we set out to hunt. Mixed with the whispers of the North American forests. This method is simple but effective. We stop, blow our whistles to lure the deer. And if nothing appears, we keep moving forward and searching. The first day was not very fortunate. We didn't see any deer from morning until evening. So we set up camp. We will use the method of gathering the branches together to form a tent. Then we crawled inside to sleep. This rough shelter would give us valuable time to respond. If a bear or mountain lion were prowling nearby and dismantle the woodpile before it could get to us. As the forest swallows its last light. Joe's voice broke the silence. He stomped his feet around the camp. Eyes wide complains that his bow is missing. He swears he left it leaning against a tree. But it's gone. We looked at each other in confusion. Question our memories. Suddenly, we saw a bough resting eerily on the base of a tree in the second level of the forest, which the light hardly touched at all. Joe swore he wouldn't move it. And we believed him. A feeling of uneasiness creeps in. By Uncle Bob's strict orders that don't go into the forest alone. Even the simplest of tasks always watching over each other. And when Uncle Bob walked out, he fired a shotgun into the woods. It is a warning to open the passage of the unknown. And took the bough and handed it to Joe. That night, Uncle Bob's warnings intensified. "Two of you, go to the tent," he ordered. The forest held secrets. And we feel the weight of it pressing in. I sense something lurking, testing us with the slightest experience. It's like the thousands of cases of missing people in the woods that are whispered in stories all over America. The dawn broke with a quiet intensity as we resumed our journey. I knew I had a duty to guard my back, for lacking the skill to drive an ATV meant I was responsible for our rear. Instead of facing forward like the others, I turned my back, vigilant for any signs of danger. The wilderness was unpredictable, and tales of lions lurking in the shadows were all too common. Just last week, in our vicinity, a hiker had met a grim fate. A lion had emerged from the forest and claimed her life. This method of rear watching was our safeguard. As I sat facing backwards, an unlucky deer emerged from the dense woods, leading us to a clearing. We knew the drill. Quickly and efficiently, we harvested the meat and horns, valuable commodities worth 1,500 coins back then. Joe would store the meat in our icebox, ready for winter, and we'd share a portion for our meal that night. Our hunt was for a creature much larger than any deer from Thailand, towering at 3 meters tall. It took time to process such a beast, so we journeyed slowly, covering ground over a few hours. The darkness closed in on us as we reached Camp Point 2. Sitting with my back turned, I couldn't shake the eerie tales told by the park officials, stories of lost souls wandering the forest, unseen by those ahead but clearly visible to those looking back. As night enveloped us, the darkness was absolute, rendering my vision useless. I resorted to intermittently flicking on the flashlight attached to my gun, conserving battery while trying to pierce the black void. Suddenly, I heard it, a sound of something chasing our vehicle. My heart pounded as I strained to identify it. The rhythm shifted between four-legged and two-legged strides, a chilling alternation that defied explanation. There, looming just 10 meters away, was an enormous deer, its antlers reaching skyward, eyes glowing red. It pursued us with a frenzied determination. For a fleeting moment, 4, 5, perhaps 6 seconds, I was frozen, entranced by what it might do next. I didn't shoot, call out, or move. Then, as mysteriously as it had appeared, it faded into the darkness behind us. The temperature was a frigid -2 degrees, yet my hands were drenched in sweat. It wasn't fear of the supernatural that gripped me, but a primal fear of the unknown. We reached the second camp, and though my mind reeled, I kept silent about my encounter. Later, as we settled, I approached Joe and asked about the Wendigo, the legendary creature he'd spoken of. He seemed to understand, compiling his thoughts like an encyclopedia. "I'll tell you tomorrow," he said, and I knew he recognized the truth of what I had seen. Joe refused to speak of it at night. Once we entered the camp, I recounted our strange encounter to everyone. Uncle Bob, without hesitation, gathered our bullets and performed some kind of ritual, chanting incantations. We watched, skeptical and uneasy, wondering if such rituals could protect us from the forest spirits of America. That night, despite our usual practice of sleeping in pairs, I found it hard to rest. The weight of my experience kept me awake, thoughts swirling in my mind. The next morning, I confronted Joe about what I had seen, asking if he had any knowledge or stories that could explain it. He confirmed my fears. It was a Wendigo, or something even worse, a Wechuk. Joe described the Wechuk as a spirit formed from countless deaths in the forest, a malevolent force that grew stronger with each soul it claimed. Unlike the spirits of Thailand, which might be appeased with respect and rituals, the Wechuk was relentless, hunting humans with a singular purpose: to consume. That morning, our camp was filled with crows, a sign that the Wechuk had marked one of us. Joe explained that according to Indian beliefs, the Wechuk sent crows to track its prey. We couldn't know who among us was marked, but we were all in danger. I tried to rationalize the crow's presence, suggesting they were attracted by the deer carcass we'd hung nearby. Joe dismissed this, insisting the crows were a sign of our impending doom. When faced with this terrible truth, so we discussed our next steps. Going back the way we came would be like staying in the forest for another night. Moving forward means facing unknown dangers. The whole team voted to go a new way because it didn't require going back the same way. So we decided to press on, hoping to reach the other side of the forest. On the third morning, we set out for our next camp, an abandoned mine at the top of a mountain. The site was once a bustling mining town, now a ghostly reminder of the gold rush era. We reached the mine and set up camp in one of the old houses, a relic of the past. That evening, I talked with Uncle Bob about the deer. Uncle Bob said he had seen deer eat corpses. Uncle Bob recounted a chilling tale from 3 years ago, back in 2009. He and his fellow soldiers had ventured into the wilderness, setting up camp near the old mountain mine. That evening, as they sat by the fire, reminiscing about their past, an unsettling stench permeated the air, a putrid smell that unmistakably signaled the presence of death. Determined to find the source, they scoured the area. At the base of a tree, they discovered a pair of shoes and a backpack. Looking up, they saw a corpse hanging from a branch, long dead. As seasoned soldiers, they weren't afraid of corpses. They brought the body down, checked for identification, and found it belonged to a woman. Birds had feasted on the exposed flesh, leaving a gruesome sight. They buried the body under a tree, intending to report it to the authorities as soon as they returned to civilization. That night, as they were about to sleep, they heard the sound of digging snow. The whole camp came out to check. They found a deer trying to tear the corpse's arm off the body. They were astonished by this strange sight. No one shot a single person. They watched the deer succeed in their terrible task, and run away into the forest with the arms. Come back to the abandoned mining house. We found it to be in good condition but looked unstable due to its history. The previous group of hunters hurriedly left, leaving their belongings behind. It was like they were rushing to escape something. Even though I'm worried, but Joe assured me that the danger was outside, not inside the house. We prepared for our final night, around 8 p.m., while talking with Rich inside. Joe and Uncle Bob came over and shouted for us to get our guns ready. A strange noise was approaching. It is reminiscent of a deaf person trying to speak, which is a guttural sound that is hardly a language. It's getting louder and louder, as if amplified by speakers. Uncle Bob imitated the strange sound, and there was a reaction. He explains that sometimes imitating the sounds animals make brings them out of hiding. But this sound was unlike anything we had ever heard before. It was a high-pitched whistle, followed by a shrill cry. This eerie parody confirms that the source is not human. Rich identified the source of the sound and shouted, "Behind the northern pine tree, 50 meters away." And without hesitation, he fired a shot. The sound of the gun ringing loudly. It was a constant barrage. Their bullets reverberated throughout the forest like thunder, which made my ears ring for a long time. After the last bullet was gone, the hunting rifles, which had 5-round magazines, fell silent. Each gunman quickly reloaded his gun. And when everyone finished loading their guns, Uncle Bob had just finished casting his spell. He loaded his rifle, facing east, and shoot again. Uncle Bob claims he saw something strange and awe-inspiring. Like a deer but runs on two legs. He was unsure due to the darkness. But he shot at it, confident that he would achieve his goal. But none of us dared venture into the night to confirm. But we agreed to wait until morning, taking turns keeping watch. The morning air brings a chill. We head east. To check for traces of the past night. Uncle Bob was sure he would achieve his goal, but there were no deer, no traces of anything out of the ordinary. According to ancient wisdom, forests keep well-kept secrets. We discussed another strangeness of the forest and prepared to head back. That year, Rich and I both bagged a deer, sharing a meal and saying our goodbyes before parting ways. Rich invited me again the following year, planning a bear hunt near the Canadian border. But I had work commitments and couldn't join him. That year turned out to be the last time I saw Rich. In 2012, Rich disappeared in the Norse Katsij Mountains. He went bear hunting with two friends. And the last place that someone saw before disappearing is a town called Deer Brew near the border. Despite extensive search efforts by officials and volunteers, but it didn't work. Uncle Bob organized a team to search for Rich for 2 years. But no trace of Rich or his comrades ever was found. The forest had swallowed them whole, leaving behind only questions and fears. The vast, unforgiving wilderness offered no clues, no clothes, no shoes, no remnants of their camp. It was a place where the cold could claim a life within hours. The stories of the forest coupled with what we witnessed that fateful night haunt us. Was there anything that was aimed at Rich at that time? Is his disappearance connected to strange sightings? The answer disappeared under the shadow of the tree. Only guesswork and regret remain. The forest has too many secrets. And some mysteries are better left untouched. The lesson is clear. And from that day on I never slept in the forest again.